What's going on, everybody? I just wanted to come on and do a COVID-19 decompression session. Kind of refamiliarize some of the details that we were told throughout this event so far, and just kind of trying to put into perspective some of the angles that this simulation, this exercise, has taken. All right, so we can go back to when we were hearing the reports from China. This was back in January about this virus breaking out over in Wuhan, China. They said it came out of a wet market. I think specifically they were saying it either was contracted from a bat or a penguin, which is another type of animal. But basically, they were saying someone ate one of these animals that was at this wet market in Wuhan, China, and later contracted the virus, and from there it began to spread. Now, we go back a little bit and we find out before that there was a doctor actually trying to warn, a doctor from China was trying to warn the officials, the health officials over there about what was taking place, the infections or those fires that he was beginning to see. And immediately in the beginning, that information was suppressed. I believe it wasn't even just to the Chinese officials. This went out. This might have gone out to the, like World Health officials as well, and no one was picking up on it. No one was speaking about it. His information was suppressed. He was put in prison, and he actually later died, supposedly from coronavirus. Okay, so that's how this whole thing kind of began. So it started off with this story behind it where it appears to have been known about before it was told to the masses of people as it is now. Now as we move forward, we start hearing of it spreading to other surrounding countries, and pretty much from there it just kind of started hitting all the other countries at once. I think it was, I believe, February 2020 where the first case appeared in the U.S. They say someone that came in contact with someone who had contracted the virus and brought it to Washington, I think Seattle, Washington. And I remember one of the first major stories was about how there was an outbreak in a nursing home in Washington. And I believe that was the first real cases reported over here in the U.S. So from there, of course, they say it began to spread, down to California, and pretty quickly they were saying cases were being reported all over the U.S. Fast forward a little bit, and then there was a day where pretty much all the sports were shut down. It was the same day they said Tom Hanks had contracted the coronavirus. There were, I believe, two players. One in particular, Rudy Gobert from Utah Jazz, who they said contracted the virus, and they had video of him earlier, I think a few days ago, kind of mocking the whole coronavirus situation and kind of touching different things. So a few days later, they reported that he had contracted the virus. And at that point, pretty much all the sports start to shut down their operations. Like I said, that was the same day. That I believe the next morning after that night, they reported Tom Hanks had tested positive for coronavirus. And from there, I would say it began to spread. That's when it really began to come into effect. Not too long after that is when certain counties start implementing stay-at-home orders, or at the very least curfews, Um, Down in Florida, Orange County and Osceola County were two of the earliest to implement these measures. And I think this was right around about March 21st, somewhere around there, where this began to come into place. Or no, actually, it was before that this came. It was March 21st is once most states that ended up putting in a stay-at-home order had begun to do so. There were several states like North Dakota, South Dakota, and some of those states in that region that ended up not implementing stay-at-home orders. But most states at this point began to implement their stay-at-home orders. And originally, it was only supposed to last like until the end of April. It was almost 2 weeks, so it might have been like March 19th or something through the end of April. And as we approached that time, they began to extend it for an additional 30 days. So most states decided they were going to extend it throughout to the end of April. We're now at May 8th, and some states still have stay-at-home orders. Now, Florida has lifted their stay-at-home order. Georgia was one of the earliest to kind of start lifting their stay-at-home orders and allowing people to, I guess, return back to the economy. But there was a lot of shaming early, especially down here in Florida, with people being on beaches and saying still, not quote unquote social distancing. And you can see how the media started to present things that shamed that. This is when they really started to pull a lot of people's minds toward following this guideline. A lot of people started to embrace the idea of, locking themselves down, self-isolating. Now, this is not even a smart strategy because in the long run, you're going to have to face the virus and build immunity. Your best chance at doing that is to work on your health actively, but also still remain in social instances, because once you isolate, you stop the spread of bacteria. That's not a good thing. You can't build your immune system that way. Of course, you don't want to allow bacteria and things to grow up, just remain on your body, but you have to get a little bit of exposure in order to build upon that. That's where the concept for vaccinations comes from. However, this needs to be done naturally and not through chemical injections. All right, shift the camera a little bit just so that the sun doesn't disturb us. But yeah, I believe it's important that we build our immunity, build our immune systems actively and not postpone that and allow our immune system to fail. But anyway, yeah, as we were approaching the end of March, they extended the stay-at-home orders for another 30 days until the end of April in a lot of states. And then throughout that time, there's just, a lot of misleading reports about where it came from, where it started, because like I said, they had the rhetoric about it coming out of a wet market, but then later on, they started having other reports saying this came out of a Wuhan virus lab, somewhere where they test these viruses. We also had reports that people who died with COVID-19, not necessarily from it, but just because they had it in their system, they tested positive for it. They was counted as a COVID-19 death if they ended up dying while being positive with it. A lot of these people had other factors that could have caused them to die, and that has to be recognized. We were getting a lot of reports about how overwhelmed doctors and nurses were, but at the same time hearing that many hospitals had to lay off many of their workers because they just weren't getting the same amount of business. Many surgeries had to be postponed by the orders of the states. We was getting misleading information from the White House about different potential drugs that could be used to, I guess, treat the virus. Um, just a complete circus in that regard. But my point is, there's much confusion that was laid into this story. Um, but yeah, as we approached the end of April, they began to face more resistance. There were people in different states all around the country who were protesting these stay-at-home orders and saying, it's time for them to return to work. They have families to feed. You know, many people being laid off, the highest unemployment rates ever, and people aren't able to even get their unemployment. Many people at this time, and that's just a socialist system anyway. You can't run a successful economy by having millions of people on welfare. So people do need to return back to being able to earn their own income. And no one should be telling another person what they're allowed to do with their body unless they're harming someone. You got to understand rights. No one has the right to tell you what to do with your body. No one has the right to mandate a vaccine to be injected into your body. These aren't rights. And we can't lose that in these moments of fear. See, this has been a major fear operation in which problem, reaction, solution, right? You either create a problem or you identify a problem. You set up what you want to be the overall reaction, outcome of this problem when everything is resolved, right? You have a problem, you set up a reaction, how you want people to respond to your problem. And then you already have a pre-thought out solution that you're ready to present, which that's all you wanted in the first place. But you have to do those other first two steps of the problem and having a reaction to that problem to get the solution that you want. So keep that in mind as well. I don't think that can be understated. There's still a lot that is not understood about this event. It was pre-planned. You can look back at Event 201. This was conducted in October of 2019. That's about 6 weeks before even the first doctor had came out with reports about this this virus spread. So that shows you this was not a random chance occurrence event. This is something that has been planned, and the responses to it are planned. A lot of it's to gain a reaction. And I think it's important that we pay attention to what's taking place in front of our eyes before we lose a lot of our freedom that we still do have. The right direction for us to move is towards freedom, not away from it. You can't run towards fear, because when you do, you're running away from your freedom. All right. So now we're at the end of April, and we're entering May, right? So this is when they start implementing what's called the phases of reopening, where they're allowing certain people to go back to work. See, during the pandemic, during the stay at home, I should say, they were calling what they call some people essential and others non-essential, referring to the workers who basically they consider had the jobs that were going to be necessary. And just making that decision of who's allowed to go to work and who can't, that's directly taking authority over your body, your freedom of movement. It's not a right. Now we're moving into, after we're coming out of the stay-at-home orders, we're going into what's called phases of reopening. These are state-led operations where, really, I mean, I'm sure it's organized at a higher level, but from what we can tell, it's coming from the state, and they're telling their citizens how they're allowed to operate as we come out of these stay-at-home orders. Still restricting access, restricting social exposure, compromising our immune systems, controlling our bodies, taking away our income, pushing for more and more control over our data, our biometric data, our location data, what we think about, what we watch, what we're allowed to see, YouTube, censorship, controlling the narrative. You can see how this just is being pushed on every level of control. It's not about one thing. It's about many things, and it's still being written. We're still in it. It's a long-term operation to put people in fear and break them into complacency and compliance with that which they wish you to do, whoever they may be. So supposedly, I guess over probably this next month, there'll be several phases, up to probably two or three, where they're soft opening the economy, as they would say. It's not right. So from here, all we can do is continue to pay attention. They're still having problems with the supply chain because of all this that they've done. The economies aren't going to be what they be. I mean, how many small businesses aren't going to be able to reopen because of this whole event? How many people have lost their lives? Maybe not even just your physical life, but your life, the things you've done, the things you did to be happy to live as you please. That's been taken away. We've been divided and pitted against each other based on what we believe is right. And it's all through a program of fear. So just wanted to come on and kind of decompress all those ideas. I'm sure I'll do another one of these after we get a little bit further down the road and just touch bases back with all these operations that have come into place. Like I said, no one knows how this ultimately ends, or if it does. I mean, this could just be how they continue to roll from now on, but it's going to really come down to us and what we choose to believe and how we choose to behave. So, guys, take it easy. I'll catch you next time. Peace.